As you have mentioned, these comments from former President Trump sort of make them have to relive what they went through when they were sitting in prison for a crime they didn't commit. What are your clients seeking now?
All of it. All of it. What are we seeking? Just put all of it. Hi, welcome to Racist of the Week. My name is Reese Waters. This is where we expose the stupidity and hypocrisy of discrimination in hopes we can build a more perfect union. And also laugh. As usual, I would like to thank today's sponsor, Racism. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the page, and definitely leave me any possible suggestions for nominees in the comments, or email me at reese@reesewaters.com. And shout out to all my new members here on the channel. Huh? Oh, that? Yeah, we reached 200K just last night. Thank you to each and every one of my subscribers. And also special shout out to those that were with me live during the CNN town hall with Kamala Harris and Anderson Cooper. I'm gonna have to clip that response and put that out on the timeline at some point over the course of the next couple of days. So look out for a couple of unique pieces of content from me in celebration of the 200,000. But I, for one, am extremely grateful. Now back to this dragon. Today's nominee, Donald Trump. He's on quite the Racist of the Week run. Is that 3 Racist of the Week nominations in 1 week? He must be ramping up for the election. There was that podcast with Patrick Bet-David.
Really like me. And I think black women do too. But they have a woman who is black, although you would say she's Indian, but she is black. But she really, a lot of people didn't know, which is true. But
I learned about it just a couple months ago. You know, the fact
that she's black,
yeah.
Or that she's Indian.
The fact that she's black, I thought she was Indian until a couple months ago. Things change. I mean,
a lot of people. Well,
because if you follow baseball, Sammy Sosa kind of, you sometimes have to respect people. They change, right? So I thought maybe she was doing a Sammy Sosa the other way.
Yeah, Sammy's. No, I watched that last week, and I think he spoke down to black men. I thought it was terrible the way he spoke to them. But
you think it's effective? You think he still carries the same stick as he did, maybe 8 years ago or 12 years ago?
No. I saw a guy named Van Jones. He's I don't think anybody knows who he is. He's a commentator for CNN. And he came to see me in the White House, and he was crying. And he was with a group of people that they were begging to do it. They were 5 votes short. He made a plea to me, Van Jones, total sleazebag.
Then there was the John Kelly revelations.
Now, it comes hard on the heels of new reporting out today in The Atlantic on the former president's alleged affinity for or wish for generals who were like Adolf Hitler's generals, and his alleged contempt for the family of a slain Mexican-American soldier. First, the New Atlantic reporting, Jeffrey Goldberg, Atlantic's editor-in-chief. Goldberg's piece is titled, "Trump, I Need the Kind of Generals That Hitler Had." But he leads it off with a story of an Army private named Vanessa Guillen, who was bludgeoned to death by a fellow soldier at Fort Hood in April 2020.
Donald Trump asked, quote, "Did they bill us for the funeral? What did it cost?" According to attendees and to contemporaneous notes of the meeting taken by a participant, an aide answered, "Yes, we received a bill. The funeral cost $60,000. Trump became angry. Quote, "It doesn't cost $60,000 to bury a fucking Mexican."
And he could get another one just for this.
And I refuse to say it, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, "Oh my God, that's unbelievable." I had to say it.
Sorry, that wasn't racism. I just wanted to play it again.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are not taking the same exam.
Yeah.
And I think it bothers people. They're not taking the same exam. He gets to be lawless. She has to be flawless. That's what's unfair. That's what's unfair. That's what's unfair tonight. That's what's unfair tonight. They're not taking the same exam. Look, she has policies. She may not articulate them perfectly every time. She may not put the stories in the right places, but she's fighting for actual ideas that will help real people. And he's talking about people's penises.
But right now, it's time for some long overdue consequences.
The 5 men who make up the Central Park 5, now calling themselves the Exonerated 5. They're suing the former president over his remarks during last month's debate. As a reminder, the Exonerated 5 were a group of Black and Latino teenage boys wrongfully accused of raping a woman in New York Central Park in 1989. After hours of interrogation, they confessed but later retracted their statements, saying they were coerced. They pled not guilty but were ultimately convicted and served several years in prison. More than a decade later, DNA evidence and the confession of a convicted rapist proved their innocence. Today, now free and advocating for criminal justice reform, the group has filed a defamation lawsuit against Trump for these comments at his one and only debate with Vice President Harris.
They said they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty.
Okay, but all 5 had pleaded not guilty, and the victim of the attack, which was horrific, survived.
Okay, I just want to put a pin in this right now and think about the level of arrogance that it takes for you to get up at a debate stage decades after this occurred and speak about whether or not people deserve their freedom without even knowing the basic core tenets of the case. Just think about the arrogance that it takes to get up there and just speak freely about a case that has been around your ankle for quite some time. It's not like people haven't brought this up to you before, but here you are decades later saying that someone died. You gotta wonder what kind of a man would feel that much confidence speaking about something like that without even bothering at any point to look up the basic facts.
Trump's comments on the case go back decades when he published this newspaper advertisement in New York's 4 main newspapers just days after the 5 boys' wrongful confessions in 1989 coerce confessions, saying, bring back the death penalty, and, quote, they should be forced to suffer, and when they kill, they should be executed for their crimes.
Now, you know who I would like to holler at right now is all of my Trump for criminal justice people. Yeah, all the people talking about the First Step Act and all the people talking about Trump is just like us. That's who I want to holler at right now, because you would think that if Trump's eyes had been open to the experience of Black and brown folks coming from disenfranchised, poor communities who don't get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the criminal justice system, as much stark contrast as I could set that with how Trump has been treated with the criminal justice system, that's enough for me and most people with an operable brain. But I understand you're not operating with our sense of logic and fairness. So this is what I want to ask you. Wouldn't you think a person in Trump's position at this point would understand all of the forces at play and fall back from his previous position? Wouldn't criminal justice reform Trump sing a different tune when it came to the Central Park 5 today?
Joining me now is Shannon Spectre, a trial lawyer who represents the Exonerated 5. Shannon, thank you for joining Top Story tonight. So do you have a case here, and what is your lawsuit about?
Well, thank you, Tom, for having me. And I could not express it better than you did at the top of this segment. On September 10th, in the debate with Vice President Harris, Donald Trump wrongly stated that these 5 men pled guilty. He wrongly stated that they killed the victim. Neither is true. And in fact, these 5 men have been thoroughly exonerated. The guilty person admitted guilt. His DNA was matched to the victim. He was convicted. He went to prison. These 5 men not only were exonerated, but the DA filed a motion with the court to have their convictions vacated. The judge signed that order. So there's no doubt that these men are not guilty. And Mr. Trump persists in this 35-year campaign of hate against these 5 men, even though he knows better. He knows now for over 20 years that these men are not guilty of that heinous crime.
Now, why would a man who is actively trying to court support from black and brown people, especially from black men, why would a man like Trump continue to assert the guilt of the Central Park Five, even in the face of evidence exonerating him, when he knows that this is a linchpin of support for those misguided souls that will appear all over Talk News in brownface and try and whitewash his nonsense? Like, why would he do that? The only justification that I can muster is one of the things that we know about Donald Trump is that at no point can he ever admit that he was wrong. Ever. At no point will he ever apologize. At no point will he ever take a step back. And it is for that reason that even in this case, where you have all of the exonerating evidence, even when it's in his own best interest to fall back, because that would coincide a lot more with the false nonsense narratives of Trump for criminal justice reform and Trump like us. Even when it's in his best interest to fall back, he cannot do it because he can never admit that he was wrong. And this is somebody on the precipice of the White House.
The Trump campaign released a statement responding to your lawsuit, saying in part this is just another frivolous election interference lawsuit filed by desperate left-wing activists in an attempt to distract the American people from Kamala Harris's dangerously liberal agenda and failing campaign.
And there it is right there. And there it is right there. All of my black men undecideds, all the people Obama was talking to, all my black conservatives, I'm gonna need y'all to make some sense of that for me. I'm gonna need you to do some math on that for me, because it's not possible that these men who were innocent and had years of their lives taken away from them and had huge figures in the city advocate for their death, and even decades later having their name dragged through the mud in a national presidential debate. It's not possible that they could feel wronged. That's not possible. That is not possible. This has to be to try and distract from Kamala Harris's flailing campaign. Because us, on the other hand, we flying high. We talking Arnold Palmer. We just picked up a second shift at McDonald's.
Everybody.
Hey,
I'm having a lot of fun here, everybody.
Oh my God, oh my God.
Hello, everybody.
You can take this, right?
One of the five appears in a radio ad, as you know, for the Harris campaign. Does that bolster the Trump campaign's claims that this is politically motivated?
No, Tom, it doesn't. I'm not here to talk about politics, about elections, or anything of the sort. We're seeking redress for these five men for being horrifically defamed in front of 67 million Americans during that debate. I think it's unfortunate that President Trump had his campaign spokesperson undertake that attack against these five men instead of having his lawyer respond and say whether the lawsuit is true or false.
And let me also add that part and parcel with never taking a step back and never apologizing is doubling down when you are wrong. So these men who had you advocate for the death penalty and had you go on a decades-long campaign for their guilt, even after being exonerated, and bring it up at a presidential debate, now get to be slandered because they bothered to stand up for themselves. I wonder where we've seen that before.
We do know that the cemetery has filed an incident report, and defense officials tell us that's because members of the Trump campaign staff were aggressive both physically and verbally towards a cemetery staffer. That staffer was trying to enforce rules that prohibit campaigns from filming at grave sites across the cemetery, but especially at Section 60. Section 60, as you noted, is an emotional spot in in the cemetery for so many because it is where many young veterans killed in Iraq and Afghanistan are buried. The Trump campaign denies that any incident occurred and that the campaign had explicit permission from the families to be in Section 60.
Now, in terms of the incident, there was no incident. From what I understand, a woman had a mental issue. And I don't know if it was TDS or it was something else, but it was handled and it was minor.
Shannon, I want to ask you about that. What does the law say? Could Trump come out tomorrow and say, oh, you know what, I made a mistake. I was at the debate. I was under pressure. I simply misspoke. Would that be enough to drop this lawsuit or that's not enough?
Tom, I don't know of any human being to whom Donald Trump has ever apologized. So I'm not holding my breath that he would apologize to these 5 men. But if he would do that, that would be fantastic. If he would issue a retraction, that would be fantastic. But I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah. Finally, the Exonerated 5 received $41 million from New York City when they were cleared in 2002. As you have mentioned, these comments from former President Trump sort of make them have to relive what they went through when they were sitting in prison for a crime they didn't commit. What are your clients seeking now?
All of it. All of it. What are we seeking? Just put all of it. In the box where it asks you how much money you just put all of it. We want it all.
They're seeking to clear their names once again. This has all been dredged up again. They've been accused on national television to a huge audience of having pled guilty and having killed this woman. Neither of those things is true. They're seeking a trial to clear their names. They're seeking damages to compensate them for their loss of reputation and their emotional distress. And they're seeking to have an award of punitive damages against Mr. Trump to punish him and deter him from making these kinds of statements and taking this kind of conduct in the future.
Now, one thing that I will say about Donald Trump, and it might be the only semi-positive thing that I ever have to say about him, is money does not deter him from a whole lot. No, for most of us, you apologize and then you can go play. That's enough for us. You put millions of dollars on the table and he still won't apologize. Exhibit A, E Jean Carroll.
The whole point of this enormous damages amount, unprecedented damages amount, is to tell Donald Trump to shut up. Right? If you could think of it this way, every time Donald Trump wants to insult Jean Carroll, he's going to have to write a $40 million check for each sentence. That's how bad this is. I can't believe his lawyers haven't succeeded in just telling him, look, campaign for president, run for president, make your accusations about a two-tiered justice system, but leave this alone. Stop attacking people who are no longer public citizens. Stop attacking people where you've already lost and the court has already said what you've done is liable. Because every time he insults her again, he's going to have to cut another $20 to $30 million check.
A few moments later.
But she made up a story and fabricated 100% that I attacked her at Bergdorf Goodman. You know, it's very interesting. I don't think they were allowed to use this either. Her favorite show is Law and Order. And there's a almost exact story as her story in Law and Order.
So I appreciate that you made the stakes very clear, and I appreciate that you challenged him to apologize. But as he said, I'm definitely not going to hold my breath in that regard. Now, I don't know exactly whether or not this has been assigned yet, this particular case. I know who I want to adjudicate it, though. I got a judge in mind.
In arguing why I should impose a particular sentence, she tells me about her ailments, her loss, her struggles in life. But in reality, for those of you who may have been here earlier this morning and seen some of the folks who've occupied that chair before Ms. Peters, there could be not much in the way of a comparison in terms of the type of sympathy one would extend to Ms. Peters. Those folks didn't have 4 lawyers representing them. They didn't have a team of assistants helping them. They're not getting rides in private jets all over the country.
I know, not in the jurisdiction, but I'm sure he slandered them in Colorado at some point. I can think of some more people. Can Stormy Daniels have a case? She's having, Stormy Daniels, Donald Trump is the only situation I've ever heard of where the ugly side claims that nothing happened. Even beyond all just normal logical comprehension of the facts. That is wild. I can think of a great number of possibilities because Trump's slander role is wild. And by the way, can we add some defendants to the case as well? Because it's not enough for Donald Trump to be out here on this decades-long campaign. He has brought some people with him.
Central Park 5, there were so many people. You had a Democrat, governor, Democrat, DA who prosecuted the guys, and they admitted to it. There were a lot of people in New York
they were
at that time.
Exonerated and freed, and there was never an apology, never sorry, never a my
bad. However, I will
bad.
say that you have to look at somebody and what they actually have done.
And if you think I'm going to devote an entire video to dragging Laura Trump by her vocal cords, you are absolutely right. That one is coming soon. Now, when it comes to the criminal justice system, obviously, we have a long ways to go. I mean, the Kathleen Ryans of the world are still out here.
Now to an update on a story the 7 investigators first broke last month. A local judge accused of making racist and homophobic comments.
Well, tonight, 7 investigator Heather Catallo has obtained more recordings of the judge. Here's Heather with what she's learned now.
Judge Kathleen Ryan was removed from her docket in late August, and I have learned that investigators from the Judicial Tenure Commission have been conducting interviews about the judge's alleged behavior with employees at the Oakland County Probate Court. The question now is, will she be taken off the bench for good or allowed to go back to work?
I can honestly say that, okay, I'm not systemically racist, I'm a new racist.
The 7 investigators were the first to reveal the recordings that Oakland County officials say prompted Judge Kathleen Ryan's removal from her docket in August.
Black. I'm so off at this Black Lives Matter, hashtag Me Too, all this. Oh my God, like you.
But we have seen some light. There's this case, there's the aforementioned Judge Matthew Barrett.
What do you think the chances are that you and or Donald Trump are in prison a year or two from now?
Well, I'll tell you, if I thought I was going to prison, I would probably be on the beach somewhere.
Anything I missed? Anything else we need to address?
Judge, I think you missed a sentencing on count 6.
Oh, I'm sorry. Count 6 is criminal impersonation. That's also consecutive. That's 15 months to the Department of Corrections. So it's 8.5 years total, plus the 6 months.
And of course, I gotta give a shout out to Texas's Judge David Fletcher.
Mr. Blake, you're charged with possession of marijuana. We are going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent.
Defendant crossed unauthorized crossing point from convenience store to apartment complex.
Wait, he did what?
He crossed an unauthorized crossing point, so I guess he crossed the street.
Is he jaywalking?
Yeah. Yes, Your Honor.
Walking while black.
A PC search was conducted, and the officer observed a large sack of marijuana.
I don't think so. Walking while black. I don't think so.
Now that I think about it, it was a couple other cases that put wind underneath my wings this week.
Well, in Lexington, former University of Kentucky student Sophia Rosing has been sentenced to a year in prison. As we've reported, Rosing pled guilty earlier this year to assault charges after she was caught on camera using racial slurs and attacking a student employee in a dorm. The video went viral in 2022. ABC 36's Anna Medina breaks down what happened yesterday in the courtroom, including Rosing's message to the woman she assaulted.
But wait, there's more.
Oh, you know we're going to talk about that. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Good news for all of my members. The badges and emoji are finally here. And I want to hear from you. What do you think about them? How do you feel? Send me an email at reese@reesewaters.com. And if you want to take them out for a spin, just show up to one of our premieres or one of the lives, or even just drop a comment and let those new emoji fly. And if you haven't joined yet, the link to membership is in the description.